Welcome to Rainbows Are Circles, a podcast exploring human potential and everyday wonder. What possibilities open up for us when we explore life with optimism, curiosity, and an open mind? Join me, Julie Malari, as we wake up to wonder and speak with inspirational guests on the topics of personal development, alternative health, and even magical, mystical, yet often misunderstood practices. Are you ready? Good day, my friends, and welcome back to Rainbows Are Circles. To start off, I have a question for you. Yes, you. What do Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Well, aside from being geniuses in their own unique ways and having massive positive influence on a global scale, all three of these people attribute their success to the same thing. Yep, from the title of this episode, you probably guessed it. Intuition. Steve Jobs said, "Intuition is a very powerful thing, more powerful than intellect." Einstein said, "Indeed, it is not intellect, but intuition which advances humanity. Intuition tells man his purpose in life." And Oprah said, "Learning to trust your instincts, using your intuitive sense of what's best for you, is paramount for any lasting success. I've trusted the still, small voice of intuition my entire life, and the only time I've made mistakes is when I didn't listen." But what exactly is intuition? Some people call it the inner voice, a gut feeling, or just a sense of knowing. But how can we differentiate between intuition and all the other voices in our minds, or random thoughts, or just other sensations in our bodies? Is everyone intuitive? Can intuition be developed? And how do we know we can trust our intuition in decision-making when our logical minds tell us to make safer, more practical choices? So many questions, but fear not, friends, because we have Kim Chestney on the show to speak with us today. Kim is an internationally acclaimed intuition expert, author of Radical Intuition, and the founder of Intuition Lab, a revolutionary school for accessing higher awareness. In this episode, Kim explains what intuition really is, how to develop it, how it shows up differently in different people, and how it can guide us in creating our most inspired and authentic lives. Simply speaking, intuition helps us to be true to ourselves, as opposed to listening to other people's ideas of what we should be doing or what a good life or success look like. Both Kim and I share stories of what our lives were like before we started listening to our intuition and after, and how much of a difference intuition has made in helping us feel more alive every day, more trusting of the universe, and more aligned with who we truly are. Before we jump into today's show, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can be updated whenever a new episode comes out. And if you've been enjoying Rainbows Are Circles, please leave a rating and review for the podcast on your favorite podcasting player, such as Apple Podcasts. All of these actions affect the algorithms of the podcasting platforms so that other people can find the show more easily. And lastly, if you're loving Rainbows Are Circles and would like to get bonus content, early access to the episodes, and even exclusive discounts on the services from some of our guests, join our Patreon membership. Kim is generously offering 25% off any of her courses at Intuition Lab, just for our Patreon members. So visit patreon.com/rainbowsarecircles if you'd like to sign up. And without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. Hi, good morning, Kim. Thank you so much for joining us here on Rainbows Are Circles today.
Thanks for having me, Julie. I'm excited to be here.
So, Kim, I'd love to hear about your story and how you started embarking down the path as an author and an intuitive coach and teacher.
Well, it's actually a funny story. It's an intuitive story because my first book came out about 15 years ago, and it actually got its start in an intuition development class. When I was younger, as a young person, I always had, I was very intuitive. I had a lot of intuitive experiences that I needed to understand, as I think many people out there have had throughout their lives. So I started going to classes to really learn to develop my intuition many, many years ago. And at this time, one of my partners told me, "You're going to be writing a book. I just got this idea that you're going to be writing a book." And I thought, that's crazy. Like I wasn't even thinking about writing a book. I was young in my career. I was still working in the arts, and that wasn't even on my radar screen. But lo and behold, that night I got a call from my mom who asked me to help her write her book. And I thought that's what she was talking about. But the things happened. I won't go into a long story, but all in all, within a year, I had my first book written out there and translated into 4 different languages all around the world. And a really wonderful opportunity just came along and fell in my lap. And it all started with someone telling me about it in an intuition development class. So it was kind of a neat full circle.
Oh, so define intuition for us. What is intuition?
So intuition, that's a great place to start because everybody has a different idea of what intuition is. And when I realized this very early on when I was starting to write this book and talk about what I did. So, some people think intuition is a gut feeling. Other people say that it's some knowingness that they have or a spiritual religious experience or a creative idea. So there's so many different ways that we experience intuition. That's one of the reasons why there's really not hasn't been really a singular definition that people really get when it comes to intuition. So that was sort of the goal of this book, Radical Intuition, is to talk about the big picture of intuition and how it speaks to all of us differently and why it speaks to all of us differently. Why you might experience gut feelings and I might experience knowingness or physical sensations or all these different ways that our intuition can talk to us. So ultimately, the simple answer to that question is intuition is a knowing, feeling, sensation, or experience that comes to us from a place beyond this realm of the mind, the boundaries of linear thinking, and we can call it above, beyond, comes to us simply out of nowhere, right? So an intuitive insight just arrives, it pops into our head. An intuitive idea just comes to us, right? We've had those things just come to us, all these phrases we're used to talking about. When we have callings or really missions and purpose in life, we have our intuition sort of driving us and inspiring us. So it's the way that we're moved from a place higher than this world, beyond this world, and a higher way of thinking and knowing than our simple rational mind can really wrap its brain around.
Why do you think it's so important for people to know their intuition and to develop it?
Well, ultimately, getting intuition is really just part of our natural being. Everybody has it. Every person's born with it. You don't need to have like superpowers or anything to use your intuition. We're designed to have two different, we have 2 hemispheres. We have 2 different ways of processing information, intellectually through our rational thinking mind and intuitively through, our creative mind. So we know this is a fact that we have these 2 sides of our being, but we've really lagged on developing this intuitive creative side just because it's so much easier to understand the reality of this linear thinking because it's right there. It's in front of us. We get a simple answer. Where intuitive thinking can be a little bit more subjective and have imagination and all these nebulous things around it that people don't quite grasp or have a concrete reaction to. So the reason that we want to start to rebalance these 2 sides of our mind is because that's really the ultimate way we were designed to think and live. We want to be intuitive. We want to be able to access this higher insight and this inner wisdom and allow it to work as a complement to our really smart thinking mind. So when we start to live that way, we became more in touch with ourselves. We start to be centered. We start to realize our purpose. We start to realize who we really are. Because when we get caught in the mind, we know we've gone so far into the mind that we've lost touch with who we really are at the core. We're so caught up in social media and trying to figure out the best paths for ourselves, listening to the conditioning of the world and all the stuff that this mind-made world has created on the outside, that we've forgotten about this richness within us. So it's time to turn back into that richness and use that as a complement to all of this stuff that's outside, so we can get back on our center and start listening to the true voice and figure out who we really are instead of what everyone else tells us we are.
So good. So, some of my listeners know this story, but when I was growing up, I became a nurse because that's kind of what was expected of me. And so I had this feeling when I was going through nursing school, when I became a nurse, when I was going through all of it, it took years. The whole time I felt like I was fighting against myself. I felt like I was fighting against this inner voice that knew I didn't want to be a nurse, but I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I just felt this pressure around to be, to choose a secure path, to get a good job, to have benefits. And it really, I really got lost for a little while. And I felt, when I was working as a nurse, I felt like I was just so far off from like what my heart wanted. And when I finally got the nerve to quit my job and like become a yoga teacher, I didn't know, what was going to happen or if I could even make money being a yoga teacher, but I just felt like this breath of fresh air that I was finally like not fighting against myself anymore. Would you say that that inner voice is like a sign of the intuition?
Yeah. And I love that story. And I love that phrase, fighting against yourself, because I think that's something so many of us can relate to. It's this natural process we go through as we grow up. The world starts to define us. They think, our parents, our family, our teachers, everyone tells us, oh, this is the best thing for you. When inside, only we know what's best for us. And, we might have this calling and this knowingness, but we get pulled down on these paths. So many of us find ourselves in that place of fighting ourselves, spending decades fighting ourselves sometimes. And life just doesn't feel right. There's a part of you might be happy. It's not a bad life, but there's a part of you that knows that it's not what you're made for. It's not your life. It's not, what your talents and your vision and your heart has called you to do. So that sort of dissonance, it's intuitive dissonance, it'll remain there as a low key hum until we start to face it and really do the kind of thing that you did. Make that tough choice, get out of our comfort zone and listen to what's calling us, because that's really the voice that's calling us to our true path and our true purpose and our real happiness. And as long as we listen and to the dissonance and stay in that low hum of non-intuitive living, we're only going to be living a half life. We're only going to be having half happiness. But that true path to happiness is when we're aligned with our truth and who we are. And we can be that authentic person and shine our true light into the world. And that's what intuition is about. It's about guiding you to that. It's about showing you your path, not the path, your unique path. And that's what's so wonderful about intuition. It's tailor-made. It's custom-made to you and what you're meant to do in the world.
How do we start to listen to our intuition? Like how do we know when it's our intuition speaking versus our thoughts or just emotions?
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest questions I get. And one of the things we really focus on in my online school Intuition Lab, because I really wanted to explore this and sort of hack intuition and understand the answers to these questions, because there are a lot of voices in our head. And you say, there was like, oh, listen to your inner voice. Well, sometimes my inner voice isn't very nice. Sometimes it's self-critical. You know what I mean? Sometimes my inner voice doesn't say nice things to me. Sometimes it's full of fear, full of emotion. So there's a lot of different voices in there. And we have to learn to attune to that true north, that constant still voice of our intuition. And with time and practice, it becomes clear. Once you understand the difference between your inner voice and your wants and your needs and your fears and your conditioning, and all of those voices, then it's easier to start to align with. And ultimately, your intuitive voice is going to be that still, calm, strong voice of peace and power within you. It's a peaceful voice. It's never going to be something that's going to call you to something that's going to hurt you. It's never something that's going to be angry or full of fear. It is a peaceful, calm voice, but it's also a powerful voice. It is the seat of our power because it gives us strength in knowingness of who we are and being able to stand aligned with that truth. So, it's really a process of reconnecting with that inner peace and also that inner power.
So what would a first step be for someone who doesn't feel like they're intuitive and they don't know how to hear that inner voice?
Yeah, the first step I always say is to slow down, slow down, make more space in your life. Because, we talk about being in this culture of mind, and we're so immersed in all this toxic thinking and obsession with technology and all of this stuff that we get caught up in. So when we do all this stuff in every spare moment, we remove those little opportunities for our intuition to come into us, because intuition's all about coming in those silent moments, right? In that stillness. In the stillness is where your intuition speaks. So when we get into that place where we have a quiet moment, I mean, like, how many times have you been in the shower and got like a great idea, or driving to work and are like zoning out and got all these cool thoughts or ideas that are coming to you? These are the spaces. These are the rich spaces where intuition can come in and touch us and speak to us. So we need to create more of those in our life. We need to spend more time with ourselves, get out in nature, get in that high vibration place, because intuition comes from a level of awareness that's beyond our simple level of consciousness. It comes from a higher level of consciousness. So we want to uplift ourselves. We want to get ourselves into a good high vibration place where it's easier for us to tap into that and connect with it. When we're in a low vibration place or in a place of unconsciousness or heaviness, those things just can't make it through. We have a lot of dense energy that doesn't allow us to connect with our intuition as much. So you'll notice the more that you grow, the more that you transform and step into your truth and your higher awareness, the more your intuition is going to open up and speak to you. It's a byproduct of our growth, our intuition. So the more that we grow as individuals, the more our intuition naturally starts to open up. It's a connected process.
Can you talk a little bit more about where our intuition comes from? Because it's not our thinking minds, it's not our brains.
Yeah, so I like to look at intuition as sort of our connection to all of the wisdom or information that is beyond our thinking mind, right? So you think of the thinking mind as sort of in terms of Newtonian physics. It's all the stuff that is like cause and effect, up and down, the world as we know it, right? So that's old school thinking, right? New school thinking is this sort of quantum thinking we can do with intuition, when suddenly we realize that we can actually get from point A to point Z without going through point A, B to Y in between. So it's so exciting to see intuition in that light. And really the fact that quantum physics has existed and really come into the forefront of our understanding over the last century has really opened space for intuition to start becoming part of this conversation. Because now 200 years ago, we couldn't talk about intuition like this because nobody understood that quantum reality was real. It just seemed crazy. Like, how did you psychically know something? Because you thought of a friend and they called at the same time. That's impossible. That's just a coincidence. But no, now we know we're all connected. We understand entanglement. We understand that particles that are not connected necessarily in space and time physically are still connected energetically. And that goes for our minds and our hearts and us as beings. So this is just the beginning of really opening up this new kind of awareness and this new way of thinking and understanding the world that's not woo. You don't need to have crystal balls or talk to spirits. Intuition is hardwired inside us. We just haven't been using it for so long. So now is really the time to start reconnecting. And as you start to use it, you're able to, I like the analogy of technology. I worked in technology for 20 years, so I think a lot in terms of technology. So you'll hear me use words like that. But the information in the world is all out there, all around us. Try to understand it like everything that's ever happened or will happen in the world. All of that is data. All of that is information that's around us in the world, in the universe. It's like the cloud, right? The cloud we use to store all of our information in our computers. And our intuition is that line, that connection that allows us to download and tap into those little pieces of information and those ideas in that cloud. So when we're plugged into our intuition, we're able to access this information that our regular thinking mind, just going step by step by step, will never be able to get to. So it's our connection to that genius, that higher awareness, that wisdom that is above and beyond what we typically know in the world. In the past, we've been told that it's been impossible, but now we know that it's very possible, and we're just beginning to understand it.
So do you think that everyone is intuitive, or that some people are more intuitive than others?
Yeah, every single person that's ever walked the face of the earth, male or female, no matter where you're from, everyone has intuition. It's just the way humans are built. It's the way all life is built. Animals have intuition. Plants have intuition. Intuition is the way that we communicate with all forms of life. I always say it's the universal language. If aliens ever come, we'll probably have intuition with them. Intuition is this way that all beings can communicate in the same language. So yes, so everyone has it, but also some people are born a little bit more open to it. That's why you have people who are just really naturally intuitive and can know things, while other people have to work a little harder. It's just like anything else, like playing a piano. Some people can just pick it up really easy. They have a natural talent for it. Others, like me, I'm not great at the piano. I have to work really hard to learn to use it. So either way, it can be developed. It just is a little easier for some people than others in the beginning. But ultimately, once you start opening up that intuitive energy, it just snowballs and compounds, no matter who you are or what your affinities are.
Mm. You mentioned in your book that there are 4 different ways. There are 4 different main ways that intuition will speak to us. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So back to that idea we were talking about in the beginning about how everybody experiences intuition differently. One of the things I think is so important when people start working with their intuition is understanding their unique personal language. So when I say intuition speaks to us each differently, well, we're all different, unique human beings. We all have different bodies. We all have different hearts. We all have different minds. So our intuition is going to speak to each of us in the way that we're designed and we're created. So really understanding that it comes down to really 4 basic ways that our intuition can speak to us. And we're all sort of a different blend, a unique blend of those 4 ways. And it boils down to the very simple elements of body, mind, heart, and spirit. The 4 elements that we've talked about throughout history since the dawn of civilization is the core way of human beings to connect with the world and understand and process information. Carl Jung worked with this with his 4 cognitive functions of knowing, thinking, feeling, experiencing through intuition, and also, so many others. So it's really a way of understanding how your intuition speaks to you through your body, through your mind, through your heart and your feelings, and then really through your experience of the beyond and your true nature that is beyond this world. So, when you're experiencing intuition with the body, like how is your body speaking to you? Are you getting like a gut feeling? Are you having like the chills? Is your body calling you for like cravings to certain foods? There's so many different ways that your body talks to you every day intuitively without words. And then with the mind, and the intuition of the mind is when we use our intuition to make decisions. It's so important to use that inner guidance system that we have, or those first impressions that you get of people. And you have to use discernment to really understand, what you're dealing with when you encounter people and events and situations every day. So it's very important. And then thirdly is the intuition of the heart. And that's not so much our emotions and our romance and all of that kind of heart, but really our heart in terms of our passion and our drive and our callings to serve the world and help each other and create new things and things to make the world better. So it's really our inner calling of our heart. And then the 4th type is the intuition of the spirit. And that's, this kind of the archetype of the mystic, the person who really connects with the realities above and beyond the everyday life, and knowing that there is something beyond this world and how it interacts with this world, and is really part of our process of growth and the expansion of consciousness within ourselves and also in the universe.
I think one of the most challenging things when working with intuition is knowing when to trust it, or if we can trust it. So let's say you have a decision that your mind tells you to do one thing because it makes sense, but you just have this feeling that this other path would be more beneficial. How do you go about resolving or kind of making your way to that decision?
Yeah, and that's a tough one. I think that's something that, many of us struggle with, is really deciding, making that pros and cons list, or just listening to our inner feelings. At the end of the day, there's been studies out there that show that we make the decisions based on how we feel. And if we're aware of that and we can actually consciously integrate that into the decision-making process, it can really be helpful into, keep us from going down those wrong paths. Because if we're just so much in our head, we get into that place of analysis paralysis. We can't make decisions. We get caught up in sort of our ego and our fears or our wants and our personal aspirations. But when we shift and we learn to trust our intuition and trust that inner guidance and that true north, even if it doesn't make sense. And that's the thing. We have to trust it, because half the time intuition makes no sense. tells us to do the hard thing. It tells us to do the thing that doesn't like add up, right? And so that's part of the process, is really taking that leap of faith. But once you've really followed your intuition and it started to come through for you, and you know you can trust it, it's easier to take those leaps of faith and to really believe in yourself, believe in your truth and your inner truth instead of that truth of the world. And that's a huge thing. And that's really what radical intuition is about. It's about making that shift from defining your life and creating it based on the dictates of the outside world, instead turning within and defining your life and creating it based on the inside world and your inner callings and your inner knowings and your truth within you, and then standing for that. So it can be very radical, and it can change the way you live your life, as you know. You know, once you're really in touch with your intuition and you're really connected to it, you can't live that half life anymore. You can't live partially authentic, because your intuition calls you to be true, calls you to be who you are, and to shine that true light into the world.
Have you always been able to access your intuition easily, or did you have a period in your life where you felt like you were fighting against yourself?
Oh, good question. No, yeah. I've definitely had several periods in my life. But see, that's part of the thing. We learn, that's how we learn, right? Because we know how it feels when we're not following our intuition, right? It's important for us to go through those times, because if we lived these perfect lives and we didn't know what it was like to be out of sync with our intuition, we wouldn't realize that that was even a possibility. So yeah, you know, there were several periods in my life where I thought I was following my intuition. I thought I was doing the right thing, but now looking back on it, I understand that I was confused, or that I confused something else for my intuition, or I had some fears that I wasn't facing. But the wonderful thing is that I learned from those things, and that sort of act of failing forward is so important. So we can't beat ourselves up for those times that we went a different way. Because in my life, if I hadn't gone that other way, that way of dissonance, I picked up so much along the way. I picked up so many breadcrumbs on that path that I'm using today, where I am now, that it was actually really important for me to take that detour, even though it didn't feel right at the time and it was a little painful from time to time. These things can actually be things that support us on our journey, and we just don't realize it in that moment. So life is still looking out for us. Life's going to draw us to the things that are going to pull the best out of it. And our intuition's always going to guide us back on track. So we can just, at any moment, no matter if we're what rut we're in or how far off track we've gone, at any moment, if we make that choice to realign with our intuition and trust ourselves and get back on track towards that true north, it will guide us. Our intuition will take us there from wherever we are. And that's the beautiful thing. We're never too far away from our intuition. We just have to trust it and resolve to follow it and learn from those detours and those dark places that we've traveled through along the way.
I find that reassuring to know that, you know, even if we get off track or take some detours, that's actually where we're meant to be, because whatever we learn from those detours will guide us back to our path. So it's like, we don't have to be afraid of making mistakes. We just have to, I think Oprah says that, you know, there are no mistakes. Those are just signposts telling you where to go next.
Exactly. And I love that you said that. We can't be afraid of making mistakes. And that really that's part of one of the core teachings of radical intuition, is you can't be afraid to make mistakes, because anytime there's fear, there can't be intuition. Those things cannot exist together. Fear is kryptonite to intuition, right? As soon as fears creep in, it's totally casting an ego impression onto our intuition. So it's not pure anymore. So getting out of that fear and saying, okay, it's okay if I make a couple mistakes. I'm going to learn from it. As long as I keep getting back up and getting back on track, it's going to be okay. So just trusting our intuition, failing forward, be willing to make a mistake here or there. But then also knowing that if we do make that mistake, that we're going to keep going and we're going to keep trusting ourselves and learn from those mistakes, then, you know, we're still in that process of growth. I always say intuition is the difference between learning the easy way and the hard way. If we get in track with that intuition, it'll show us the easy way. We're all going to the same place. We all have that destination of growth and truth and love and all those wonderful things. But intuition can take us on our path there, the short way, the easy way. Or we can go our own way and follow our mind and follow those not pure choices, and maybe have to go up and around the mountain and learn a few things and fall down a few times. But ultimately, we're still going to get to the same place.
Yeah, it's almost like treating our lives as like a game or an experiment where it's like, try this, try that, see what happens, see where everything leads you.
Yeah, and I think that's actually kind of cool. If you actually just try it, just take the radical intuition challenge. Just say, okay, and that's honest to God, that's like what I did many years ago when I had my, awakening when I was a young person. I didn't do it intentionally, but that's what I just naturally did. I said, okay, I've discovered this little magical thing that happens when I trusted myself and didn't have any fear, and I just went all in on it, and I realized that it was a magical thing. So I said, I'm going to do this. And my life changed, like my whole life changed. And you can't really understand it until you go through it. So I say, don't take it from me. Go into your life, make that commitment, trust yourself, see how you start thinking different, see how your relationships heal, how you start to relate better, how the doors open for you in new ways, how you realign with the things that you were made for, each of us uniquely, those creative opportunities, those partnerships, those people that you attract into your life. All of that stuff shifts when you realign with that direct course of intuition and start living out of trust and living out of really the flow of life instead of fighting it and trying to create your own.
Yeah, that reminds me. I read this book by Shakti Gawain, who talks a lot about intuition. And she says, one day, just imagine that everything you get from your intuition or everything that just kind of feels like the right thing to do is the thing that you should be doing. And see how your day goes when you live like that.
Yes.
And you won't want to go back to the other way.
Yeah. And I really feel like when I was a young person, I must have read some of her books because I feel so aligned with her work. And she's really one of the founders. She's the founder of New World Library, who published my book. So I feel really like I'm part of her, the tradition or lineage of Shakti Gawain. And I think there's a lot of her ideas in this work. So it was a real honor for me to be part of, her company and her legacy. And I'm so glad you brought that up because it really is. I mean, that's really all it is. It's a simple decision to make that choice to live this way and try it out, try it on, see what happens. And that's all you can do. And it'll speak for itself.
You kind of alluded to this big change that you made when you decided to listen to that intuition. What was your life like before you did that and then after?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. So this was in college when this happened for me. And I was out living on my own as a young woman, in my own apartment, living my own life. And that is scary, when you start doing that for the first time. It was very independent. My college years where I lived an apartment, took care of myself, went to college, all that stuff. So it was a lot. It was a lot for a young person. And I think there was a lot of fears, a lot of fears living alone, of fears that I was gonna, if I needed help for something, I wouldn't have anybody there. So there was just a lot of fear around like being out in the world and on my own. And, I went away for a weekend with some friends painting. I was an art major, so I was very intuitive from a young age and really didn't care about getting a job that paid money. I just wanted to, do what I loved. And so I was into oil painting and we had this wonderful weekend. And, I had some experiences that weekend that really allowed me to look at my life and put me in a place where I had to make a choice to trust this inner truth. And that's when I made that decision. And, I think for me, it was huge. It was like the floodgates opened because I was holding back so much out of that fear. I was not doing things out of fear. I was not letting people into my heart because of fear, because I didn't want to get hurt. When you're young and you're dating and, there's a lot that you're dealing with when you're opening your heart to new relationships. So I think for me at that moment, it just opened up life to me because I wasn't afraid to do things that I really wanted to do and have experiences that I knew that on some level that I wanted to have, but I was cutting myself back from because I didn't want to get hurt or I didn't want to have life hurt me in some way. And then ultimately that is what really led to this awakening, because once I started doing this, once I let go of those fears and really put my trust in life and trust in myself, amazing shift happened within me. It was like a vibrational shift. And I was really able to, I just was filled with so much joy and so much power and so much peace, all of these things in this that we talk about when we experience those moments of enlightenment and truth. that I saw the world in a whole new way. And I've never seen it a different way since. Like, it's completely changed the way that I understand and live in the world. And, there's been moments where I've had those dark nights of the soul, and, it's been harder to really connect with that, but I've never lost it. And I'm ever grateful for that gift, because if you don't experience that and you don't know that there's this deep wonder and richness and support of life that's really true and is within you at all moments, at every moment of your life, the world is a scary place, but the world's not a scary place. It's not a scary place for me anymore, because I understand that there is so much within me that's more powerful and more important than the world out there.
Oh, that was such a beautiful story. The way you talk about it, it seems like being intuitive and listening to intuition is really trusting in life energy and the universe, and trusting in that the universe supports us and wants the best for us. And if we can listen to it and learn to trust that, instead of fighting against it like so many of us do, or getting stuck in our heads, then we will be supported, and we can move through life with this sense of ease and comfort and trust and passion, and wake up every day knowing that our hearts are in the right place and we're on the right path. Because at least for myself, when I wasn't following my intuition, when I was following that path of being a nurse just for the sake of fulfilling other people's expectations, I would wake up in the morning feeling like dread and tightness and sadness and discomfort. And it was like the life energy was drained out of me. And then once I started trusting and just flowing and following what felt right, it's like I was alive again.
Absolutely.
And I think we all just want to feel alive in this world and happy.
Yeah. And that's such a good point, because when you're living your truth, you are more alive than you'll ever be. When you're not living that half life, right? You're living that full life. You're fully yourself. You're fully alive. All of your energy is in it. And, we don't want to spend our lives living someone else's dreams. And that's what so many of us do. We get into these jobs that could be really great jobs. A nurse, that's a dream job for someone. Might not be your dream, right? And I had the same thing in technology. My career in technology was amazing. People would have murdered people for my job. Like, they just loved, it was a great job. I got to work with so many wonderful people. But, someone else who was in a similar position said that to me one day. She said, I had to leave because I felt like I was living someone else's dream. And when we have that experience, we know we have a wonderful job, but there's still something within us that says, this is a dream. It's just not my dream, right? It's okay. It's okay to let this go. Even though on the outside, it all adds up to being something really great. It's not my dream. So if we want to be fully alive, if we want to live from that place of aliveness and connectedness to life, yes, we have to follow our intuition. We have to be true to ourselves. We have to be 100% authentic.
Tell us a little bit about your intuition school.
Yeah. So I had to make a hard decision, when I was working in tech, and I had this wonderful job, which is, one of the highlights of my life. I was really called to do this specific intuition work and teach this. So I had to make the hard decision to walk away from a really, a good job that, that I was at the top of my game at, and I just said, I really need to listen to my heart, because my heart's not in this, right? So I made the choice, a scary choice, to walk away from that and to go and start Intuition Lab and to start doing this as my job full time, to serve people who really want to understand this process of intuition within and come alive and awaken and really move into this space of higher awareness with life. Because for me, intuition, I think, is the most important thing in our life. And I'm not just saying that because that's what I do. I'm here because that's how strongly I feel about it, because I think it's something that's been so overlooked for so many centuries, that it's so important that we rebalance right now, that we reactivate this part of our being. So I started this, it was about 3.5 years ago. I started Intuition Lab with the idea of working with people to open up their intuition, to go deeper into intuition, to experiment with it, to push the boundaries of it, to really understand it. And every level. So we've created this wonderful community of people that have really been on this journey with me of opening up intuition in ways that like none of us even expected it to happen along the way. So I teach, classes. We have 6-week classes, deep classes, coaching, short classes, workshops, all kind of different ways to start, getting in touch with your intuition and figuring out what it means for you to be an intuitive person. And ultimately, my favorite things are retreats. We've been doing retreats. I would do maybe 3 or 4 intuition retreats a year, which now unfortunately is on hold with COVID, but really working one-on-one with people to move into that space of intuitive awakening has been, one of the most rewarding things that I've done in my life.
Do you think intuition can be tested and measured?
So in order to really measure your intuition, you just have to measure it through experience, through validation, right? So for me, yes, intuition can be proved. It's not something it is repeatable, so it can be measurable and it can be learned, right? So I totally believe that. But I think the way that we've been testing for intuition is crazy and it doesn't work. You can't use a linear thinking sort of measure for something that's not linear thinking. So my second answer to that is if we want to look at somewhere that's done that, we can look directly at the United States government. The United States government and the Project Stargate, you might have heard about that through the various movies in Hollywood, The Men Who Stare at Goats and Third Eye Spies, about how, in the 80s, the United States government started to use psychics, which mostly were just artists and creative people. These people, most of the people that were in that weren't like anybody with special superpowers. They were just regular intuitive people that they brought into remote view, which, by the way, remote viewing is one of the most easiest things that anyone can do. I've done it in my classes. And if you've ever watched Third Eye Spies, you can see Russell Targ did a great experiment with a room full of hundreds of people and remote viewing, and practically everybody in the room got it right. So it's very easy. And the United States government employed this practice. It was a secret, classified practice for 20 years and to the tune of $20 million. So we wouldn't have been doing it for 20 years and spending $20 million on something that wasn't working, right? So the proof for intuition is in the results. So if you get an intuition and it comes through, you get an intuition and it's real, then it's real. Anybody who's ever had intuition work for them, they know it's real. You know this and you measure it by your own experience of it and it becoming a reality. So the more that we use intuition in our life and the more it comes through for us and these little validations, the more it proves itself to us. And yeah, I think that, we could do some studies. We could do the right kind of studies where we can track that kind of stuff. Instead of doing like the little quizzes and the things that are really our thinking mind disguised as intuition.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of something one of my teachers, Anna Dorian, says, is that you have to have your own direct revelation. You have to have your own direct experiences of whether this is working, how it's working, and what it feels like when it's working for you. So one thing that I started doing is journaling a lot. So when I feel like I have an intuitive hit or an intuitive feeling about something, I'll write it down, and then I'll see how it plays out over the next week or two and see if it felt right or if it was totally off. And what I've been finding is that when I have like an intuitive feeling about something, it makes my days easier. It makes decision making easier and it flows more easily. And I can go back and look at my journal and see like, oh, this actually felt pretty accurate. So having my own little experiments has been really helpful.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And you'll see I talk about that a lot in the book. Is an intuition journal is like the best idea when you're working with your intuition because it really allows you to go back and look at it, because half of intuition comes in hindsight. Most of the time we'll get an intuition. We have no idea what it means in the moment. And if we don't write it down and we don't record it, then, we miss those little opportunities for validation where we can look back and be like, oh my God, I totally knew that was going to happen. Or I totally had this feeling or this idea and it was so good. So there's a lot of ways that doing these little experiments, doing these little sort of practices in our daily life, even like, tuning in the morning. One of the things I used to do back when we used to go to work, when I was developing my intuition, I would set intention and do my morning ritual. And I'd say whatever things came to mind for that day, I'd just write them down and see if any of them came to fruition, like what color shirts people would be wearing, or, just simple things that might come up in conversation. I get like an impression of a dog, and then, someone like tells me like there's some big thing that's about someone's dog that goes on at work, right? So it can be simple things like that just help to validate that we're able to plug in to this sort of timeless experience of life, really. And that's what intuition is about. It's about knowing that, this is just a subjective, sort of spectrum that we're on right now. We're able to know things because everything's already happened. It's not like we're like predicting the future. The future's already happened. No matter what you think about destiny and in the different ways of our possibilities in the future and all of the ways we can live our life, those things are already out there. This is just an illusion where we are at this time and place. So our intuition can see beyond that illusion.
Yes. Oh, well, we are getting close to time, Kim, and I wanted to make sure that we have time for our fun little lightning round questions.
Yay!
So tell us something wonderful that happened to you or something that you learned in 2020.
Well, what happened to me that was wonderful is I got to give birth to this wonderful book that I have been working on for almost 10 years now. So there's nothing real, everything in 2020, as horrible as 2020 has been, I really got to bring this out in the world. And that's really been a silver lining for me to be able to share this message and really bring it together in a meaningful way for other people to experience and share with me.
When you are having a rough day, what is something that brings you back to center?
I love going for walks. I think for me, I really love I've moved out of the country. I live near a lake, and really just going for walks in the woods by the lake and being alone is really rejuvenating. And also like gives me an opportunity to reconnect, with, like I was talking about, being in that space, reconnecting with myself, and just nature itself just has a really restorative vibration for me. So I think getting outside and seeing the wonder of nature and life is the best for me.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Do you believe in magic? And if so, what does it mean to you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like for me, I mean, intuition is magic. Like, not to tie everything in intuition, but like really that's my whole life. Really is. It is magic. And that's what's so cool is when people take these classes with me and all these magical things start happening, like magical things, serendipitous things happen when you start to work. Serendipity and coincidence and all of these things, synchronicity starts to happen more and more when you're aligned with your intuition. You're like, wow, we live in a world of magic. We live in a world of wonder. And I think that's one of the gifts of intuition is it opens us back up to that dimension of being that is magical and wondrous and unpredictable and not this mundane sort of four walls world that we get stuck in sometimes.
Oh, I love you. I love that you said that because the tagline of this podcast is waking up to wonder. And it's because it's so easy to just get stuck in a rut and stuck in like our thinking minds and like what rational thinking tells us. But there's so much beauty and wonder and magic like around us all the time if we open ourselves up to it.
So true. So true. And that is 100% part of, I think, this process. And I love that title because waking up and experiencing the wonder of the world, they go hand in hand.
Yes. Oh, okay. Last lightning round question. If you could be any animal, what would you be and why?
Oh, right. I wanted to think about that. And the first answer that came to my mind was a bird. I would definitely be a bird because I wanted to fly. And then I started thinking what kind of bird I would be because I wouldn't want to be a kind of bird that like attack. I wouldn't want to be a bird of prey. I don't want to be a mean bird. So I'd probably be a songbird or something that could bring some joy to other people and also fly high and have my freedom and see the world. Maybe a dove. Doves have partners too. That's sweet.
Ooh,
They're
yeah.
buddies.
And they're a symbol of peace and love.
They are peace and love. And that's the thing. I mean, everything is important when we share it, sharing in life is part of the beauty. So, it's nice to be able to share that with people around us.
One more question that I just thought of right now. What has been the most fulfilling thing for you on this journey as an intuitive author and teacher and coach?
Well, I think for me is actually really coming into my own as my true self and being able to live the life that I always knew I was made for. Like deep inside, I remember when I was younger, I was in my 20s in college, like I knew, like I had this idea of who my best self was, and there was just this kind of thing that's alignment within me that, I felt good when I was doing these certain things and I didn't feel good. Because, when you're young, you have to try a lot of things on. You're not sure, you're trying out life, you're finding your way by, failing forward. But there was a lot of that. And there were moments and glimpses back then I had of who I was when I was my best self and really feeling like I was, living my true life. And now, for the first time really doing this work and being out here full time, 100% all in, I'm finally at a point where I feel like, I feel like I am 100% the person that I meant to be and that I've really stepped into my own truth. And I think that is the reward in itself, is being able to live like that and not feel like you're living someone else's life anymore.
Yes. And I think we all desire that. And in your book, you mentioned that some of the greatest, most creative, innovative minds were very intuitive, like Einstein, Steve Jobs, Oprah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And these are people that I imagine were living their best lives, and they all attribute a lot of that to listening to their intuition.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with people like Steve Jobs, who's maybe an unlikely suspect when it comes to intuition. He's one of the biggest advocates of intuition out there, and one of the biggest examples of how intuition can make real impact in the world. Intuition was so important, the way he designed, the way he ran his company. And it can just actually really literally change the world when you have a calling and you follow it the way that he did. And he's a man too. So let's not forget, it's not just for women. Men can use their intuition in very powerful ways and have been for many centuries too. So I think all of us, when we're in that place of really, living our lives the way that we've always wanted to, we've gotten there because we've listened to that inner voice.
Is there anything else that maybe I didn't ask you that you wanted to share with people before we finish up?
Yeah, I wanted to let people know that if they want to get started working on some of this intuition stuff right now, because you can do it wherever you are in your life at any moment. You don't have to be ready to move into the Zen hilltops. You can do it in the middle of your busy daily life. If you're a parent, if you're young or old, it doesn't matter. If you want to start doing that, I have a free guide on my website. It's Wake Up Your Intuition Guide. It's got some little things you can start doing right now to start opening up to your inner voice and opening up to those guidance and the nudges that are coming through to kind of get you reconnected and realigned. And you can get that and download that on my website, kimchestney.com.
And I also wanted to mention that you have your courses, your intuition courses on your website as well. And that Patreon listeners can get 25% off of that. So you can just go to patreon.com/rainbowsarecircles if you want to get 25% off of Kim's courses. And is that the best way to people can connect with you, on your website?
Yeah, my website or on Instagram at kim.chestney, and Intuition-Lab is the school. So you can get a look at all the different courses that discount applies to. And right now we have a program called Illuminate, which is our level 1-2 intuition program. It's a 6 weeks course. It's self-study. We do have some live workshops here and there that you can also attend. But really, if you want to go deep and really have that immersive experience and that sort of inner retreat of pulling away and hitting that reset button and waking up to wonder, that's a great place to start.
Ooh, awesome. All of this information will be on the show notes as well, rainbowsarecircles.com. And Kim, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
It's been my pleasure, Julie. Thanks for the great conversation.
My pleasure. Boo, 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 boo. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. I hope you got as much out of this episode as I did, and it helped to demystify intuition a little bit for you. You can find all of these resources on our show notes at rainbowsarecircles.com. And you can find Kim at kimchestney.com or intuition-lab.com. Until next time, have a very magical day. Bam, 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 bam. Wow, 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 wow. Rainbows are circles.